They say the lantern guides the lost, but here
The emergency broadcast cut out at 3:47 a.m., and the only sound left was the rhythmic hum of the filtration system cycling 30,000 gallons of salt water through the shark exhibit. I stood in the observation tunnel with my phone dead in my hand, watching a sandbar shark glide overhead, completely indifferent to the fact that civilization was tearing itself apart 6 inches beyond these acrylic walls. My name is Derek Castellanos, and I'm the senior marine biologist at the Pacific Coast Aquarium. Am. I don't know what tense to use anymore when your job title outlives the world it was created for. The night started normal enough. I'd pulled the graveyard shift because Marcus, our usual overnight guy, called in sick. Ironic, considering what sick would come to mean in about 8 hours. I was doing the routine checks, pH levels in the coral reef tank, temperature regulation on the kelp forest exhibit, making sure the octopus hadn't figured out how to open his enclosure again. Winston was clever like that, always testing the latches with those problem-solving tentacles. I'd found him 3 times in the past month exploring the laboratory, leaving sucker marks on the microscope, and generally causing havoc with that unsettling intelligence octopi possess. The first sign something was wrong came through the radio clipped to my belt. Janet from security, her voice pitched higher than normal, saying something about a disturbance in the parking lot, asking if I'd seen anyone acting strange. I remember laughing, telling her that at 4 in the morning, everyone acting strange was pretty much the baseline. She didn't laugh back. The silence after my joke stretched too long, filled with something that made the hair on my neck stand up. Then, the screaming started. Not the normal kind, not surprise or anger, or even pain in the conventional sense. This was something primal, something that bypassed my rational brain and went straight to whatever ancient part of me still remembered being prey. The sound made my skin try to crawl off my bones and find somewhere safer to be. It echoed through the radio speaker, tinny and distorted, but no less horrifying for the low-quality audio. I ran toward the security office, my sneakers squeaking on the polished concrete floors. The aquarium after hours is a different place. Dim blue emergency lighting casting everything in an underwater glow. The constant backdrop of pumps and aerators, creating white noise that usually feels soothing. That night it felt like a heartbeat, like the building itself was a living thing holding its breath. The shadows between exhibits seemed deeper, reaching, and I caught myself looking over my shoulder at nothing. Janet wasn't in the security office. The monitors showed 16 different camera feeds, and 12 of them had gone to static. The 4 that remained working showed me fragments of nightmare. The parking lot, the street beyond, people running but wrong, moving with that horrible jerking sprint that I'd only ever seen in nature documentaries about animals with neurological damage, rabies victims in the late stages, prey animals with brain parasites that destroyed their fear response and sense of self-preservation. And the others, the ones doing the chasing, I'm trained to observe, to notice details that others miss. It's what makes me good at my job, seeing when a fish is swimming slightly off axis, catching the early signs of bacterial bloom before it crashes an entire ecosystem. That training became a curse as I watched those monitors, because I couldn't help but catalog everything I was seeing. The way their jaws hung slack, dislocated almost. The absence of coordination in their movements, like someone was puppeteering bodies that no longer remembered how to be human. The speed. God, the speed was all wrong for what they should have been, what they looked like. Nobody that damaged should move that fast. A human body with torn muscles and dislocated joints should collapse, should be incapable of that kind of explosive movement. But these things were sprinting like Olympic athletes who'd stopped caring about the damage they were doing to themselves. Something hit the main entrance. Not a knock. A body, thrown with enough force that I felt the impact through the floor. The aquarium was built to hurricane code, reinforced concrete and steel designed to hold back the ocean itself if necessary. The glass in those front doors was rated to withstand a car crash. 3/4-inch tempered glass set in steel frames, the kind of overkill engineering that came from building in a coastal zone where storms could hit with devastating force. It lasted 4 more hits before it shattered. The sound was wrong. Glass shouldn't scream when it breaks, but that's what it sounded like through the security feed. A scream, and then the tinkling aftermath, like wind chimes made of knives. I watched on the monitor as shapes poured through the opening, moving with that terrible purposeless purpose. No hesitation, no pain response from the jagged glass tearing their bodies, just forward momentum, hunting for something they could sense but I couldn't understand. I grabbed the radio. Janet, Marcus, anyone? Static answered me, broken by wet sounds I didn't want to identify. Sounds that my brain kept trying to categorize as something innocent. Someone eating, someone doing maintenance, someone working with the fish food prep. Anything but what I knew those sounds actually were. This is Derek. If anyone can hear this, get to the secure areas, the holding tanks, the quarantine room, anywhere with sealed doors. My hands were doing that thing where they felt like they belonged to someone else, flipping through the security protocols binder that lived next to the monitors. There was a section on armed robbery, another on natural disasters, hurricanes, earthquakes, flooding, fire. A surprisingly detailed section on what to do if someone fell into the shark tank. Nothing about this. Nothing about what happens when the people outside stop being people. Nothing about securing the facility against an invasion of things that used to be human but had become something else entirely. The emergency lighting shifted to full red. Proximity alarm. Something had triggered the motion sensors in the main lobby, which meant whatever had gotten through those doors was inside now. Moving through the tide pool exhibits where school groups usually squealed over touching sea stars, I could picture it perfectly, those things stumbling through the shallow pools, crushing anemones and urchins under their feet, the water sloshing over the edges as they searched for prey that wasn't there. I had 3 advantages in that moment. First, I knew this building better than I knew my own apartment. Every hallway, every maintenance access, every emergency shut-off valve. I'd worked here for 7 years, had done tours in every section, had crawled through maintenance spaces to check on sick animals or repair broken equipment. Second, the aquarium was designed in sections with watertight doors between major exhibits, a safety feature in case of tank rupture. If one of the massive exhibits cracked, you could seal off that section and prevent the entire building from flooding. Third, I had the master key card that could lock or unlock any electronic system in the facility. Every door, every gate, every security measure responded to the RFID chip in the card hanging around my neck. I locked down the lobby section first, watching on the one remaining camera feed as the watertight door dropped from the ceiling with hydraulic finality. 3 of those things were trapped in there now, clawing at the acrylic of the tide pool exhibits, leaving streaks of something dark across the glass. They moved without any sense of strategy or planning, just raw aggression directed at anything that caught their attention. One of them was wearing a security uniform. The name tag was too blurry to read on the low-resolution camera, but I knew it was Janet, and I had to look away before my brain processed what that meant. The radio crackled. "Derek?" A voice I recognized. "Derek, it's Sam. I'm in the filtration room. What's happening?" The alarms went off and I heard things I don't want to describe. "Please tell me you're still alive." Sam Reeves, our maintenance engineer. Mid-50s, former Navy. The guy who kept this entire operation running when pipes burst or pumps died. The man who'd saved the entire Pacific Reef exhibit last summer when the chiller system failed during a heat wave. He'd worked for 36 hours straight, rigging a temporary cooling system from ice machines and industrial fans while I transported the most delicate corals to backup tanks. Relief hit me so hard I had to sit down. "Sam, stay where you are. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone unless you hear my voice and I give you the code word." "What code word?" "Derek, we don't have code words. What the hell is going on?" "Cephalopod. The code word is cephalopod." "Sam, just trust me on this. Lock everything and don't come out." "Jesus, Derek, what?" "Just trust me. I'm coming to you." 5 minutes. Maybe less if I can run the whole way. Stay quiet and stay hidden. "Derek, 5 minutes, Sam. Cephalopod. Don't forget it." The route from security to the filtration room meant crossing through the tropical reef exhibit. Normally a 6-minute walk where I'd stop to check on the clownfish colony or see if the blue tang was still being territorial with the powder blue that we'd introduced last month. I made it in 3, running past tanks full of fish that continued their eternal circuits, completely unaware that the world beyond their water had ended. The clownfish nestled in their anemones. The tang patrolled his territory. The moray eel poked his head out of his cave right on schedule, looking for the morning feeding that was still hours away. There's something deeply wrong about that kind of normalcy. The angelfish didn't care about the apocalypse. The sea turtles kept swimming their lazy laps. In the big cylindrical tank, the schooling fish, thousands of silver bodies moving in perfect synchronization, continued their mesmerizing dance. They flowed like liquid mercury, reacting to invisible cues, turning as one organism, beautiful and terrible in their indifference. I found myself crying, and I'm not sure when that started. Tears blurring my vision as I ran, making the blue emergency lighting streak and swim. I wiped them away with the back of my hand, leaving salt water on my face that could have come from the ocean itself. The filtration room was behind a heavy steel door that Sam had barricaded with a tool cart. I could hear him moving on the other side, dragging something heavy. I knocked. 3 quick, 2 slow, 3 quick. SOS. In Morse code. Something my dad taught me when I was 7. And thought learning secret knocks was the coolest thing ever. He'd been a radio operator in the Coast Guard, had drilled that rhythm into me, along with basic navigation and how to read tide charts. Skills I never thought I'd need growing up in the suburbs, planning to be a veterinarian before I discovered marine biology. The cart scraped. The door opened 6 inches, and Sam's face appeared in the gap, pale under his permanent maintenance tan. "Get in. Now." I don't know what's out there, but I saw something on the security feed before the cameras went down. And Derek, I swear it looked like. I know. I slipped through the gap. I saw it too. Helped me with the door. The room was a maze of pipes and pumps, the mechanical heart that kept 70 different ecosystems alive. The sound was deafening, but it felt safe somehow, insulated. The thick concrete walls and the mechanical symphony created a cocoon of purpose. These machines didn't care about the apocalypse either. They had jobs to do: circulating water, maintaining temperature, filtering waste. They would keep doing those jobs until the power died or something broke. Sam had already pulled up camera feeds on the maintenance laptop, cycling through views of the facility. Most were still static, but a few had come back online. The ones showing the exterior of the building. I counted 6 inside the building, he said, pointing to different screens. But there's more outside. A lot more. Derek, I saw Janet. Don't tell me. Not yet. I can't process that right now. I need to focus on what we can control. And grieving people who might still be alive somewhere is not something I can afford to do. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. Sam had been in the Navy for 20 years, had seen things during the Gulf War that he never talked about. He knew about compartmentalization, about putting horror in a box so you could function. We watched the monitors in silence. Dawn was coming, gray light starting to wash out the security lighting. In that growing illumination, we could see them gathering outside the building. Dozens, then more than dozens. The aquarium sits right off the coastal highway. Prime tourist location with ocean views and easy parking. Which meant prime location for population density when that population turned into something else. The coastal town of Bayside had a population of 40,000 during the off-season, swelling to nearly 80,000 in summer. It was early June. Tourist season was just ramping up. If you've ever felt trapped by a choice you couldn't undo, you'll understand why I'm telling you this. Keep watching and subscribe, because what we decided in that filtration room would determine whether we survived the next 6 months or became part of the shambling crowd outside. We can't stay here, Sam said, but his voice made it a question, like he was testing the idea, waiting for me to shoot it down. Why not? I gestured at the walls around us. This building is a fortress, reinforced concrete, limited access points. The watertight doors are sealed. We've got backup generators that can run for weeks if we manage the fuel properly. Life support systems designed to operate continuously. Sam, this place is built to sustain life when everything else fails. That's literally its purpose. He considered this, his engineer's brain working through the logistics. Food, plus the restaurant on the second floor that caters events. I've seen the walk-in freezers. They keep 6 months of inventory minimum for the catering operation. Chef Bradley runs that operation like a professional kitchen because we host corporate events and weddings. They've got everything from frozen seafood to dry goods to industrial cans of vegetables. And the cafe has snacks, drinks, the frozen inventory for the ice cream station. Water? We process and filter thousands of gallons every day. The reverse osmosis system for the marine exhibits produces water cleaner than what comes out of the tap. We just need to redirect one of the output feeds. Actually, we should probably do that first. Make sure we have drinking water secured before anything else. Something calculating. This was a man who solved problems for a living, who looked at broken systems and figured out how to make them work. The holding tanks, the quarantine section in the back. That whole wing is self-contained, independent ventilation. Its own power supply in case we need to isolate sick animals. Separate entrance too, I added. The service bay where the transport trucks dock. That loading area has its own security gate, separate from the main entrance. If we secure both entrances, we've got a completely defensible position. We were doing it, actually planning to survive in an aquarium while the world died outside. The absurdity hit me, and I started laughing. That edge of hysteria sound that comes when your brain can't process what's happening, so it just short-circuits into inappropriate emotion. The laugh turned into a sob, which turned back into a laugh. Sam grabbed my shoulder and squeezed until the spiral stopped. Derek. His voice was firm, the tone of a commanding officer. Focus. If we're doing this, we need to secure the building completely. Check every access point. Get supplies moved before those things figure out how to get in through somewhere we haven't thought of. We need a plan, and we need it now. He was right. I took 3 deep breaths, the way I'd learned to do before public speaking events or difficult phone calls with donors. The panic didn't go away, but it got quieter, manageable, pushed down into that same box where I'd put Janet's face and the sounds from the parking lot. Okay. Priority 1, seal the building completely. Priority 2, inventory supplies. Priority 4, keep the essential systems running. Priority 5, Sam added grimly, figure out what we do about the animals that need us. That one hit different. The aquarium housed over 30,000 individual animals across 400 species. Most could survive on automated feeders for a while. But the delicate species, the jellies that needed constant attention, the baby sea lions in rehabilitation, the sick sea turtle recovering from a boat strike, they'd die without daily care. Some would die quickly. Others would suffer longer. The thought of those animals dying while I hid in a back room made something twist in my chest. The radio crackled again. For a second I thought it was more static. But then a voice emerged. Young, terrified, barely holding together. Is anyone there? Please. I'm trapped in the gift shop, and I can hear them outside the door. They're scratching. They're scratching at the door, and I don't think it's going to hold much longer. I recognized that voice. Tyler Morrison, college intern, marine biology major, 22 years old with his whole life ahead of him. Kid made incredible sketches of the fish during his lunch breaks, detailed scientific illustrations that belonged in textbooks, was always asking questions about species behavior and tank ecology, soaking up information like those questions might save his life someday. Maybe they had. Sam and I looked at each other. The gift shop was in the main lobby, the section I'd locked down with 3 of those things inside. Tyler, it's Derek. Stay quiet. Stay hidden. We're going to get you out. Oh God. Oh God, Derek, I watched them kill people. I watched them. His voice broke. There was this couple. They were just walking to their car and those things came out of nowhere. They were so fast. So fast. And the sounds. Derek, the sounds they made while they were... You're at the back of the gift shop? Yeah, in the storage room. I locked the door, but it's just a normal lock, not like the real doors. It's just one of those button locks on the doorknob. They could break it so easily. Why aren't they breaking it? Because they probably don't remember how doors work. They're running on instinct now. Whatever they are, they're not thinking. That gives us an advantage. Tyler, the storage room shares a wall with the staff corridor. There's a maintenance access panel. Can you see it? Should be on the north wall, about 4 feet up. Like a lot of boxes. We just got the summer inventory in yesterday. Move them. Quietly. Behind that panel is a crawl space that leads to the air circulation system. It's tight, but you can fit. You're what? 5'10"? 160 pounds? 5'9". 155. Perfect. You'll fit. Follow the crawl space toward the back of the building. There's only one path. You can't get lost. I'll meet you at the access point behind the penguin exhibit. 20 minutes. Can you do that? I can't. Derek, I can't. What if they hear me anyway when you run out of water? or when they figure out how that door works, or when they just decide to start breaking things. This is your shot, Tyler. Move now while they're distracted. I believe you can do this. More silence. I could hear him breathing, could hear him working through the fear. Then the sound of boxes scraping. Cardboard on concrete. Too loud. Way too loud. Breathe with me. In for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 4. We're going to get through this. Count with me. In, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3. Out. 2, 3, 4. I couldn't tell if he was following along, but at least he was still on the radio. Sam was already pulling up the facility schematics on the laptop, tracing the path through the maintenance crawl space with his finger. His hand shook slightly. Even with all his training, all his experience, this was beyond anything we'd prepared for. It's a straight shot, Sam muttered. 40 feet through the ducting. Then he drops down into the corridor near the Penguin life support. If nothing's in that corridor, then we meet him there and get him back to safety. If, such a small word to carry so much weight, the entire future balanced on that word. If the corridor was clear, if Tyler could move quietly enough, if those things didn't decide to investigate the sounds, if the access panel wasn't rusted shut, if, I grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall mount. Sam picked up a heavy pipe wrench, testing its weight in his hand. Neither of us acknowledged what we were planning to use them for. What we might have to do if something got between us and Tyler. I'd never hit another person in my life. Never even thrown a punch outside of the self-defense class I'd taken in college. Now I was holding a fire extinguisher, like a club, and mentally preparing to bash in the skull of something that used to be human. The route from filtration to the Penguin exhibit meant passing through the kelp forest display. 20-foot-tall acrylic tank designed to look like you were walking through a California kelp bed. Golden brown algae swaying in the artificial current. Rockfish hiding in the fronds. Leopard sharks rested on the sandy bottom. A massive giant sea bass, Jake we called him, watched us pass with ancient eyes. Normally my favorite exhibit. I'd spent hours here doing observations, watching the complex ecosystem interactions, the way the kelp forest supported layer upon layer of marine life. That morning it felt like moving through a nightmare where beauty and horror existed in the same space. I kept the radio clipped to my belt, volume low. Tyler's breathing came through in bursts, punctuated by the sound of him squeezing through tight spaces, metal creaking, the scrape of fabric against aluminum ducting. His voice, barely a whisper. I'm in the ductwork. It's dark. Derek, it's so dark I can't see my hands. I'm just feeling my way forward. You're doing great. Keep moving toward the back of the building. You'll start to hear the Penguin life support systems. The pumps have a distinct rhythm, kind of a thump-hiss-thump pattern. Follow that sound. Your ears are better than your eyes right now. Okay. I can do this. I can. A metallic bang. Sorry. I kicked something. I'm trying to be quiet. You're doing fine. Just keep moving. Sam positioned himself at one end, wrench ready, looking both ways like we were crossing a street instead of navigating a building we'd worked in for years. I stood beneath the access panel looking up at the grate that would open into the crawl space. The panel was maybe 8 feet up, set into the wall where it wouldn't be obvious to visitors. Standard maintenance access, the kind that every large building has but nobody thinks about. Waiting. The penguin exhibit was visible through an observation window. African penguins, a breeding colony of 16 birds. They were awake now, milling around their artificial beach, making those donkey bray calls that always made tour groups laugh. A few swam in the pool, sleek and fast underwater, comically awkward on land. They needed feeding. Their diet was specific: capelin, herring, squid, and they needed it twice a day or their health would crash fast. Penguins have incredibly fast metabolisms. Miss 2 feedings and they start showing stress. Miss 4 and you're looking at serious health consequences. Another thing to add to the growing list of responsibilities that felt impossible. The access panel rattled. Tyler's voice clearer now. I can see the grate. I can see light. Oh God, I can see actual light. I'm almost out. That's it. Push up on the corners. It'll pop free. There's no latch, just friction fit. The sound of Tyler putting his shoulder into it. Then the grate shifted, lifted, and Tyler's face appeared in the opening. Pale, eyes too wide, a scratch across his cheek that was bleeding sluggishly, but alive, wonderfully, impossibly alive. He dropped down and I caught him, both of us nearly going down in a tangle of limbs. He was shaking so hard his teeth chattered, despite the building's constant 72-degree climate control. His clothes were damp with sweat and something else, the smell of absolute terror, acrid and sharp. You made it. I gripped his shoulders, making him look at me. Tyler, you made it. You're safe now. We've got secure areas. We've got food and water. You're going to be okay. He nodded, but his eyes were somewhere else, seeing things that weren't in this corridor, things that would probably never leave him. I knew that look from documentaries about soldiers coming home. Trauma. The kind that doesn't wash off. The kind that changes the architecture of your brain. Sam jerked his head toward the filtration room. Let's move. We're exposed out here. Too many sightlines, too many angles. We need to get back to secure territory. The three of us made it back to the mechanical heart of the aquarium without incident. Sam rebarricaded the door, adding more weight this time. A cabinet full of spare parts. A steel drum full of pool maintenance supplies. Tyler collapsed onto the floor, pulling his knees to his chest, rocking slightly. How many others, he asked. How many staff made it? Was Marcus here? What about Chef Bradley? The maintenance crew? Janet? I couldn't answer that. Didn't want to count the names of people who hadn't responded, hadn't made it to safety, had probably died in the parking lot or the lobby, or anywhere in that initial chaos. The staff list ran through my head unbidden. 15 people total who might have been here during the overnight transition. 3 of us confirmed alive. That left 12 unaccounted for. For now, it's us, Sam said quietly. The 3 of us. So we make it count. We survive, we keep this place running. And maybe we find others who made it. But right now, we work with what we've got. Tyler looked up at me, and I saw the question in his eyes, the one I'd been avoiding since the moment those monitors showed the world ending. The question that would define everything that came next. What do we do now? I looked around the filtration room, pipes and pumps working endlessly to sustain thousands of lives in glass boxes, lives that depended on electricity and expertise, and continuous effort. Outside, humanity had become something that destroyed instead of preserved. But in here, in this strange fortress of concrete and water, we still had a purpose. We still had something worth protecting. Now, I said, now we keep them alive. I pointed toward the observation window, where the penguins continued their oblivious morning routine, waiting for breakfast that they still believed would come. All of them, for as long as we can. Because if we let everything die, if we give up on maintaining life, then we're no different than those things outside. We become destroyers instead of caretakers. And I'm not ready to let that happen. The building groaned around us, life support systems cycling through their programmed routines. The sharks kept swimming in their predetermined patterns. The coral kept filtering nutrients from the water. The jellyfish pulsed in their cylindrical tanks like alien heartbeats, beautiful and fragile and completely dependent on the systems we maintained. And we became the caretakers of an ark we never meant to build. Sam opened the laptop, pulling up the facility management systems, power consumption, water quality, temperature controls, life support status. Everything was green, for now. But green doesn't stay green without constant maintenance. First things first, he said. We need to do a complete security sweep. Make sure every entrance is sealed. Every window is secure. Every access point is locked down. Tyler, you up for that? Yeah, I can do that. Better than sitting here thinking about. Better than just sitting here. Good man. Sam handed him a radio. Stay in contact. If you see anything at all, you radio immediately and you run. Don't be a hero. Don't investigate. Just run back here. Understood. We spent the next hour doing a systematic sweep of the building. Every door checked and double-checked. Every window verified secure. The aquarium had been built with security in mind. Insurance requirements for housing expensive animals meant serious locks, limited access points. What we'd thought of as annoying overkill for preventing theft now became our survival advantage. The loading dock in back was our biggest vulnerability. The bay door was steel, but it was designed to open for delivery trucks. Sam and I spent 30 minutes figuring out how to manually disable the automatic opener, then reinforced it with a steel bar threaded through the tracks. It wouldn't stop a determined assault, but it would slow them down. The second floor presented different challenges. The event space and restaurant had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean. Beautiful for weddings, terrible for security. But they were 20 feet off the ground on the outside, and the glass was rated for coastal storms. Unless those things learned to climb or found a ladder, we were probably safe. Probably. That word again. Tyler found the bodies in the staff break room. He radioed in with a voice that had gone flat, shock overriding fear. Derek, Sam, you need to see this. Break room. I'm not going in. I can't. We found him standing in the doorway, staring at something he'd never unsee. Inside, 2 of our colleagues had apparently tried to barricade themselves. Marcus, the overnight security guard. Chen, one of the aquarists who must have come in early. They hadn't made it. The scene told a story I didn't want to read but couldn't look away from. We need to move them, Sam said. Can't leave them here. Disease, hygiene, and... He paused. And nobody should be left like that. We found a supply closet. Found sheets to wrap them in. Did what needed to be done with shaking hands and averted eyes. The walk-in freezer in the restaurant became a morgue. It felt wrong, keeping them in cold storage like meat. But the alternative was worse. Tyler threw up in the bathroom afterward. Sam and I stood outside, giving him privacy, not looking at each other, adding 2 more names to the list of people we'd lost. By noon, we'd secured the building as much as possible, The aquarium had become a fortress. The watertight doors between sections gave us multiple fallback positions if something got in. The life support systems were all functioning. The backup generators had fuel for 3 weeks, maybe 4 if we were careful with power consumption. We gathered in the filtration room to plan. Sam had printed out facility schematics and supply inventories. Tyler was making notes on a legal pad he'd found somewhere, his handwriting shaky but determined. "Food first," Sam said. "We need to know exactly what we're working with." The inventory was better than I'd hoped. The restaurant kept substantial reserves, industrial quantities of rice, pasta, canned goods, frozen proteins. The cafe had snacks and drinks. Between the two, we had enough calories to last 3 people approximately 5 months if we were careful. Maybe 6 if we stretched it. "Water's not an issue," I added. "The RO system can produce clean water indefinitely as long as we have power. And we've got the backup generators plus solar panels on the roof. We're actually in decent shape for basic survival." "What about the animals?" Tyler asked. "How long can we keep them alive?" That was the harder question. The building was designed for a staff of 30, running around the clock. We had 3 people. Some exhibits were essentially self-sustaining. The kelp forest, the shark tank, the open ocean exhibit. They ran on automated systems with minimal intervention needed. But others required constant attention. "We'll need to make choices," I said, the words tasting like ash. "The exhibits we can maintain versus the ones we can't. Priority goes to the most self-sufficient systems. The big tanks with stable ecosystems. Everything else, we let them die." Tyler's voice was hollow. "We just let them die." "We keep alive what we can keep alive," Sam corrected. "It's triage. You save the patients you can save and you don't waste resources on lost causes. It's brutal, but it's survival." The decision hit me harder than I expected. I'd dedicated my entire adult life to marine conservation, to protecting and preserving ocean life. Now I was planning which animals to abandon. The specialized seahorse exhibit that needed daily feeding and constant monitoring. The jellyfish nursery where we were raising 3 endangered species. The medical recovery tanks where injured animals came to heal. We couldn't save them all. The thought made me want to scream. The first week taught us that routine was the only thing standing between us and complete psychological collapse. Sam created a schedule that he posted in the filtration room, breaking down every hour of every day into specific tasks, feeding times, system checks, security patrols, sleep shifts. Without that structure, the reality of what we were living through would have crushed us. Day 3 was when we had to make the first hard decision. The jellyfish nursery was failing. The moon jellies needed specific salinity levels and constant monitoring of their polyp colonies. The water chemistry was drifting outside acceptable parameters, and I didn't have the time to maintain the delicate balance they required, not while also keeping the main exhibits running. Tyler found me standing in front of the nursery tanks at 2 in the morning, watching the jellies pulse their way through water that was slowly killing them. He didn't say anything, just stood beside me while I cried for the first time since this whole nightmare started. Real crying, not the shocked tears from that first night. Deep, racking sobs for the beautiful, alien creatures that were dying because I couldn't save them. "We can't save everything," he said quietly. My biology professor used to say that conservation was the art of choosing what to lose. I hated that phrase, hated that we lived in a world where that was even necessary. But maybe he was right. I wiped my face with my sleeve. "These moon jellies are part of a breeding program. We're one of only 6 facilities in the country successfully raising them. If we lose them, maybe it doesn't matter anymore. Tyler gestured toward the windows where dawn was breaking over a world that had fundamentally changed. Maybe nothing we did before matters. Maybe all that matters now is keeping ourselves alive and keeping whatever we can manage running. The big picture conservation stuff, the breeding programs, the species recovery plans. Derek, who's going to care about any of that if humanity doesn't survive? He was right, and I hated it. Hated that the work I dedicated my life to had become meaningless in less than a week. Hated that my carefully maintained breeding programs and conservation efforts had been reduced to pointless busywork in a world that had moved on without us. We shut down the jellyfish nursery that morning. I euthanized them as humanely as I could, using the same protocols we'd used for mercy killing sick animals. Quick, painless, professional. I said goodbye to each tank before I did it, which was stupid and sentimental and necessary for my own sanity. The seahorse exhibit went next. Then the specialized cold water species that required constant temperature management. Then the animals in medical recovery, a sea turtle with a damaged flipper, a seal pup that had been rescued from a beach, a juvenile octopus with a bacterial infection. Each decision tore something out of me, but each decision also freed up resources and time for the exhibits we could maintain. By the end of week 1, we'd reduced our active animal care from 400 species down to 80. The survivors were the hardy ones, the species that could handle some variation in care, the big tanks with stable ecosystems that practically ran themselves. It still meant 10 hours a day of feeding, cleaning, system monitoring, and maintenance. But it was manageable, barely. The sharks were our easiest animals. They ate twice a week, and their tank was massive enough that water quality stayed stable with minimal intervention. I could throw in 50 pounds of fish and watch them patrol their territory completely unchanged by the apocalypse happening beyond their walls. There was something deeply comforting about their indifference. They were apex predators before the outbreak. They were apex predators after. Nothing fundamental had changed in their world. The penguins were harder. They needed feeding twice a day, every day, no exceptions. Their exhibit required constant cleaning because 16 birds produced an astonishing amount of waste. But they also provided something intangible that we needed desperately. Normalcy. Watching them waddle around their fake beach, barking at each other over nesting spots, diving into the water for the pure joy of swimming. It gave us something to care about beyond just survival. Tyler appointed himself chief penguin keeper. He'd spend hours talking to them while he cleaned their exhibit, giving them names and personalities, documenting their behaviors in a notebook like he was still writing reports for a college class. He told me once that taking care of the penguins was the only time he didn't hear the sounds from that first night in the gift shop. The only time the memories stopped replaying. Sam kept the machines running, the pumps and filters and aerators that were the invisible foundation of everything we were trying to maintain. He'd disappear into the mechanical spaces for hours, emerging with grease on his hands and increasingly creative solutions to problems I didn't understand. When a backup pump failed on the main filtration system, he rebuilt it using parts cannibalized from the defunct jellyfish life support. When the water heater for the tropical tank started acting up, he rigged a secondary system using the restaurant's industrial water heaters. "We're becoming a closed system," he explained one night over dinner. Canned soup heated on a camping stove we'd found in the emergency supplies. Everything that breaks, we fix with parts from something else. Eventually, we'll run out of spare parts, but until then, we keep improvising. I became the manager of our little apocalypse arc, planning meals to stretch our food supplies, organizing the daily schedule, making the hard calls about which systems to maintain and which to let fail. It wasn't glamorous work, but somebody had to do it, and I was the only one with facility management experience. We established living quarters in the quarantine wing like we'd planned. 3 separate rooms that had originally been designed for isolating sick animals before introducing them to the main exhibits. Each room had a cot we'd pulled from the first aid station, some personal space, and enough privacy to maintain our sanity. The shared area became our kitchen, dining room, and meeting space. The aquarium's public address system became our communications network. Every morning at 7, I'd make an announcement updating our status, outlining the day's tasks, providing some small piece of normalcy in our profoundly abnormal situation. It felt ridiculous at first making announcements to an empty building, but Tyler said it helped, said it made him feel like we were still part of something larger than just 3 scared people hiding from monsters. Week 2 brought the first serious test of our defenses. A large group of those things. We'd started calling them shamblers, which felt less horrible than calling them infected, or zombies, or acknowledging what they used to be. Gathered outside the main entrance, maybe 30 or 40 of them drawn by something we couldn't identify. Sound, movement, some sense we didn't understand. We watched on the security cameras as they pressed against the doors, the reinforced glass that we'd put so much faith in. The pressure built. Cracks started appearing. Sam and I grabbed weapons, fire extinguishers, a crowbar, a hammer from the maintenance shop, and positioned ourselves at the secondary watertight door, ready to fall back if they breached. Tyler was on the radio, his voice steady despite the fear. Cracks are spreading. The glass is definitely failing. Maybe 2 minutes before they're through. Copy that, I said, trying to match his calm. Fall back to position 2. We let them into the lobby, seal the watertight door, and wait them out. The glass finally gave way with that same screaming sound from the first night. The shamblers poured through, flooding into the lobby like water finding its level. We watched on the monitors as they spread through the space attracted by the movement of fish in the tide pool exhibits, clawing at the acrylic, leaving smears of decay across surfaces that had been pristine a week ago. Then something unexpected happened. They lost interest. Without any living prey to pursue, they gradually dispersed. Some wandered out through the broken entrance. Others found corners to stand in, swaying slightly like trees in a wind only they could feel. By evening, the lobby was mostly clear. A few stragglers remained, but they seemed to have forgotten why they'd come inside in the first place. They're not intelligent, Sam observed, watching the monitors. No problem solving. No memory beyond the immediate moment. They respond to stimuli, but they don't plan or strategize. That's good for us, Tyler added. Means they can't coordinate, can't lay traps or work together. They're just individual threats, not a collective enemy. Also means we need to stay quiet and out of sight. I said, if they can't see or hear us, they'll eventually move on. We just outlast them. When groups gathered outside, we went into lockdown, minimal movement, no loud noises. We discovered that the building's concrete and the constant hum of the life support systems masked most sounds from the inhabited areas. As long as we stayed in the back sections, stayed disciplined, the shamblers would lose interest and drift away. The incident did force us to make major adjustments. The main entrance was compromised now. We sealed off the entire front section, retreating deeper into the building. The lobby and gift shop and cafe became no man's land, a buffer zone between us and the outside world. We still monitored it on cameras, but we didn't venture there anymore. Losing the cafe supplies hurt. We'd been counting on those resources, but accessing them now meant traveling through an area where shamblers could wander in at any time. Too risky. Our food timeline just compressed from 5 months to maybe 3. Week 3 was when the power situation became critical. The generators were consuming fuel faster than I'd calculated. Sam did the math and delivered the bad news over our canned dinner. At current consumption, we've got 2 weeks of fuel left. Maybe 3 if we start making serious cuts to power usage. What kind of cuts? I asked, though I already knew the answer. We'll need to shut down non-essential exhibits. The big tanks are fine. They're on sealed systems that don't draw much power once they're established. But anything that requires active climate control, anything that needs constant heating or cooling, that's got to go. More triage, more choices about what lived and what died. We spent that evening reviewing every system in the facility, categorizing them by power consumption and importance. The kelp forest stayed. Low power, high stability. The shark exhibit stayed. The penguin habitat stayed, though we'd have to be more careful about temperature regulation. The tropical reef exhibit, with its constant heating requirements, had to be shut down. I stood in front of that reef tank for a long time, watching the riot of color and life. Parrotfish and tangs and angels and wrasses, all swimming through the carefully constructed reef structure I'd spent 3 years building. Coral colonies that I'd propagated from tiny fragments, nursing them through bleaching events and bacterial infections, and the 1,000 small disasters that came with maintaining a living reef. I can't just kill them, I said to Sam, who'd followed me there. These animals did nothing wrong. They don't deserve to die because we can't generate enough electricity. The shark tank is massive. It's not ideal habitat for reef species, but it's alive and running. We could relocate the most important specimens. Let the sharks have some company. The shark tank was cooler and had different water chemistry. Many of the reef species wouldn't survive the transition, but some might. And some was better than none. We spent 3 days carefully netting fish and transporting them to the shark exhibit, introducing them gradually to prevent shock and territorial conflicts. The sharks largely ignored them, these apex predators, uninterested in prey they couldn't easily catch. Some of the reef fish adapted immediately, finding crevices in the shark tank's rockwork. Others struggled with the new environment and died despite our best efforts. In the end, maybe 40% of the reef species survived the relocation. The rest we euthanized rather than letting them suffer in water that was slowly becoming inhospitable. The empty reef tank stood dark, its lights shut off to conserve power, the corals slowly dying in water that no longer circulated. Another piece of my life's work gone. Another compromise with reality. Don't skip ahead. What we discovered in week 4 changed everything we thought we knew about survival in this new world. Like and subscribe to see how we adapted when the true nature of our situation became clear. Week 4 brought an unexpected discovery. Tyler was doing a routine patrol of the upper floor when he noticed movement outside the ocean view windows. Not shamblers. Gulls. A flock of them, maybe 50 birds, completely healthy and normal, flying, hunting, living their lives like the world hadn't ended. "Derek, you need to see this," he radioed down. "The birds. They're not infected. They're not affected at all." I joined him at the windows, watching the gulls wheel and dive over the parking lot below. And he was right. They showed no signs of the infection. They'd land near shamblers without being attacked. They'd peck at debris, and take off without any interest from the monsters below. The infection doesn't spread to animals, Sam said, working through the implications. Or at least not to birds. Maybe not to any animals. Maybe it's species-specific to humans. The implications were enormous. If animals weren't affected, if the marine life we were protecting was actually immune to whatever had destroyed humanity, then our work here had meaning beyond just surviving. We were preserving something real, something that might inherit whatever came next. That realization changed something fundamental in our attitude. This wasn't just about hiding and waiting anymore. We were actual caretakers, protecting life that couldn't protect itself. The aquarium became less of a fortress and more of a sanctuary. We started taking bigger risks, opening windows in the secured areas to improve air circulation, even though it meant potentially attracting attention, using the PA system more freely to coordinate tasks, spending time in the observation areas, watching the animals, reminding ourselves why this mattered. The octopus, Winston, became a strange sort of mascot for our operation. He'd survived the initial chaos because his tank was self-contained and he required minimal care. But octopi are intelligent creatures that need stimulation, and Winston had been receiving a lot less attention than he was used to. Tyler started spending time with him, bringing him puzzle feeders made from pill bottles and PVC pipe, watching him solve them with those incredible problem-solving tentacles. He recognizes me, Tyler told us one evening. I swear he knows when I'm coming. He waits at the front of the tank and changes color when he sees me. It's like having a really weird dog. Those small moments of connection kept us human, kept us from sliding into the purely mechanical existence that survival could become. We weren't just maintaining life support systems and rationing food. We were caring for living things that depended on us. That simple act of caregiving gave structure and meaning to days that might otherwise have been unbearable. Month 2 was when we had to confront the reality that this was permanent. No rescue was coming. No military sweeping through to save survivors. No cure being developed. Whatever had happened to the world had happened completely, and we were on our own. The realization hit us all differently. Sam became more withdrawn, spending longer hours in the mechanical spaces, talking less during our shared meals. Tyler developed a routine of writing letters to people who were probably dead. His parents, his girlfriend, his college roommates, sealing them in envelopes and storing them in a box like they might somehow be delivered. I started having dreams where I was the only person left in the entire world, wandering through an aquarium that stretched on forever, full of animals I could never properly care for. We needed something to work toward, some goal beyond just surviving another day. That's when I proposed the documentation project. We should record everything, I said during one of our evening meetings. Every species we're maintaining, every system we've modified, every adaptation we've made. If someone finds this place after we're gone, they should know what we did here. They should know that people tried to preserve life even when everything else was falling apart. Tyler immediately volunteered to handle it. He set up a station in the quarantine wing with a laptop, a camera we found in the education department, and stacks of notebooks. Every day he'd document our activities, photograph the exhibits, interview Sam and me about our decisions and processes. He threw himself into the project with an intensity that bordered on obsession, but none of us mentioned it. We all needed our own ways of coping. The documentation revealed something I hadn't fully appreciated, how much we'd accomplished with almost nothing. We'd kept 30,000 animals alive for 2 months, with a skeleton crew and deteriorating resources. We'd maintained complex ecosystems in glass boxes while the world outside died. We'd solved problems that would have challenged a full staff with unlimited resources. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like treading water knowing you'd eventually tire and sink. The food situation became critical around day 70. Our careful rationing was working, but the math didn't lie. We had maybe 3 weeks of supplies left, and then we'd be facing impossible decisions. The restaurant freezers were still full of food we couldn't access without traveling through the compromised sections. The loading dock remained sealed, but was our only realistic option for eventually leaving the building. "We need to expand our territory," Sam said, laying out his plan on the table. "The loading dock gives us access to the outside. If we can secure it properly, we could potentially scavenge from nearby buildings. The strip mall across the street has a grocery store. Maybe it's been picked clean, maybe not, but we won't know unless we try." The idea terrified me. We'd spent 2 months building this fortress mentality, telling ourselves we were safe as long as we stayed inside. Now Sam was proposing we venture out into the world that had tried to kill us. "It's suicide," I said flatly. "We don't know what's out there. We don't know how many shamblers are in the area. One mistake, and we're dead." "One miscalculation with our food supply, and we're dead anyway," Sam countered. "Just slower. Derek, I did 2 tours in Iraq. I know what it's like to operate in hostile territory. We can do this safely if we're smart and careful." Tyler surprised me by siding with Sam. "We can't hide forever. Eventually something's going to break that we can't fix, or we're going to run out of something we can't replace. We need supplies. We need options. I vote we try." They looked at me, waiting for the deciding vote. I was the de facto leader of our little group, though I'd never asked for that role. The responsibility felt like a weight that might crush me if I thought about it too hard. I looked around our little meeting room, at the schedules on the wall and the inventory lists, and the system status reports, at all the careful planning and desperate improvisation that had kept us alive this long. At Sam and Tyler, 2 people whose lives depended on me making the right call. "We scout first," I finally said. "We don't commit to anything until we know what we're dealing with. Tyler, you're on cameras. Sam and I will check the loading dock, see what the exterior situation looks like. If it seems manageable, we plan a quick scavenging run, in and out, minimal exposure." Agreed. The loading dock was on the ocean side of the building, accessible through the service corridors. We'd sealed it during our initial lockdown but hadn't checked on it since. The bay door was still secure, reinforced with the steel bar Sam had installed. But the regular door next to it, the one for foot traffic, was a potential weak point. Sam and I approached carefully, weapons ready, though I wasn't sure what good a fire extinguisher would do against a serious threat. The door had a small window at eye level, reinforced glass with wire mesh embedded in it. I looked through into the loading area beyond. Empty. The concrete pad where delivery trucks parked was clear. Beyond that, the parking lot stretched toward the coastal highway. I could see shamblers in the distance, scattered individuals wandering aimlessly, but nothing immediately threatening. Nothing that would prevent a careful exit. "It's workable," Sam assessed, looking over my shoulder. "We'd have maybe 50 yards of open ground to cross to reach the strip mall. There's cover, parked cars, landscaping. If we move during early morning when the shamblers seem less active, we could make it. When? First light. We don't gain anything by waiting, and every day we delay is more food consumed." That night I couldn't sleep. I lay on my cot in the quarantine room, listening to the building's mechanical heartbeat, thinking about all the ways the plan could go wrong. We could attract a horde. We could get trapped outside. We could bring infection back with us somehow. 1,000 scenarios played out in my head, each one ending badly. But Sam was right about one thing. We couldn't hide forever. The building would protect us only as long as we could maintain it, and maintenance required resources we didn't have and couldn't manufacture. Eventually, we'd have to face the world beyond our walls. I thought about the animals sleeping in their tanks, completely dependent on us for survival. The sharks, circling endlessly. The penguins, huddled on their beach. The fish schooling in the kelp forest. They didn't know how precarious their existence was, how close they were to being abandoned by the only humans left who cared about their survival. If we died tomorrow on some stupid scavenging run, what happened to them? The question haunted me until dawn. First light found us at the loading dock door, geared up with backpacks and crude weapons. Sam had a crowbar. I had a hammer. Tyler stayed behind on cameras, radio ready. Our lifeline to safety. The plan was simple. Quick sprint to the grocery store, grab what we could carry, return immediately. 15 minutes outside, maximum. Sam checked the radio one more time. Tyler, you copy? Copy. Cameras show the parking lot is mostly clear. I count 4 shamblers in visual range. None close to the building. You've got a window. We're opening the door, stay sharp. The lock disengaged with a click that sounded impossibly loud. Sam eased the door open, the hinges silent thanks to the oil he'd applied yesterday. Morning air rushed in, carrying smells I'd forgotten. Ocean salt, vehicle exhaust residue, the complex urban mixture of a coastal town. And underneath it all, something sweet and rotting that I didn't want to identify. We stepped outside. The world hit me like a physical force. 2 months of living in climate-controlled, filtered air had made me forget how overwhelming reality could be. The sky was too bright. The wind was too sharp. Everything felt amplified, dangerous, exposed. We moved quickly across the parking lot, using parked cars as cover. Most vehicles sat exactly where their owners had left them on that first horrible night. Some had doors hanging open, windows broken, dark stains on the pavement that I didn't look at closely. Others were pristine, locked and sealed, waiting for owners who would never return. A shambler emerged from between 2 cars maybe 30 feet away. Female, middle-aged, wearing what used to be business casual clothing. She turned toward us, that terrible recognition sparking in eyes that were filmed over and wrong. The sound she made wasn't human. A wet clicking that came from a throat no longer capable of speech. "Don't run," Sam whispered. "Slow and steady. Running triggers chase response." We kept walking, angling away from her. She followed but didn't close the distance, like she couldn't quite commit to the pursuit. After 20 feet, she lost interest, distracted by something else we couldn't see. Just wandered off in a different direction. My heart was trying to punch through my ribs. The grocery store was a mess. The automatic doors had been smashed at some point, leaving glass scattered across the entrance. Inside was dim emergency lighting, providing barely enough illumination to navigate by. Shelves were scattered, some completely empty, others untouched. The pattern made no sense until I realized what had happened. People had panicked, grabbed the obvious stuff, then either died or fled before completing the looting. "Canned goods aisle," Sam directed. "Grab everything, don't be picky." We filled our backpacks with dented cans that nobody had bothered taking. Vegetables, Soup, beans, fruit, stuff that was boring and heavy but would keep us alive. My bag was loaded with maybe 30 pounds of supplies when Tyler's voice crackled through the radio. Guys, you need to move, now. Large group heading your way from the highway. Maybe 20 of them. Copy. We're leaving. We ran. The exit was clear, but the parking lot had transformed in the minutes we'd been inside. Shamblers were emerging from everywhere, from around buildings, from inside vehicles, from spaces that had appeared empty seconds before. The group Tyler had spotted was converging on the aquarium, drawn by something we couldn't identify. Back door, Sam panted. Loading dock is compromised. We need another way in. We circled around the building, staying low, using every piece of cover available. A shambler lunged from behind a delivery van, and Sam put it down with a savage crowbar strike that made a sound I'll never forget. Wet and crunching and final. No time to process. Keep moving. The emergency exit on the east side was supposed to be alarmed, but Sam had disabled it during our security modifications. We burst through into the service corridor, slammed the door behind us, engaged the deadbolt. Safe. Tyler met us halfway to the quarantine wing, eyes wide. Are you okay? Did they follow you? I saw you go down and then the cameras lost you and... We're fine. We got supplies. We made it. Share this with anyone who understands that sometimes survival means taking risks that terrify you. Comment below if you've ever had to choose between starving slowly or facing danger directly. That night we inventoried our haul. 60 pounds of canned goods between us, plus some protein bars Tyler had spotted that we grabbed on the way out. It extended our food timeline by maybe 3 weeks. Not much, but enough. We'll need to do it again, Sam said, and nobody argued. We'd proven it was possible, dangerous, but possible. And danger was better than starvation. Month 3 was when the building started showing its age. Small problems that would have been easy fixes with proper parts and unlimited resources became major challenges. A seal failed in one of the pump systems, causing a slow leak that took Sam 2 days to patch with improvised materials. The backup generator developed a concerning knock that he couldn't fully diagnose without parts we didn't have. The penguin habitat's water circulation started acting up, requiring constant manual intervention. We became experts at improvisation. Spare parts from dead exhibits kept the living ones running. Restaurant equipment was cannibalized for components. Tyler got creative with 3D modeling software and figured out we could fabricate some replacement parts using the resin printer in the education lab, designed for making teaching models, now producing actual life support components. Our scavenging runs became routine. Once a week, first light, quick trips to nearby buildings. We expanded our range carefully, always mapping escape routes, always maintaining radio contact with whoever stayed behind on cameras. We gathered food primarily, but also supplies, batteries, tools, medical supplies, anything that might prove useful. The world outside was changing in ways we didn't fully understand. The shambler population seemed to be thinning, not dying exactly, but dispersing, moving away from the coastal area towards something that attracted them more. We'd see smaller groups each week, fewer random encounters. It should have felt like relief, but instead it felt ominous. Like they were gathering somewhere for a purpose we couldn't fathom. Tyler documented everything in his project. The scavenging runs, the system repairs, the slow degradation of exhibits we couldn't maintain. His photographs told the story of our survival. 3 people fighting to preserve life in a world that had given up on preserving anything. Month 4 brought the hardest decision yet. The penguin habitat's water circulation had degraded beyond our ability to repair it. The pump still worked, but barely, and the water quality was dropping despite our best efforts. The birds were starting to show stress lethargy, reduced appetite, abnormal behavior. "We need to shut it down," Sam said, and I could hear how much the words cost him. He'd grown attached to those birds as much as Tyler had. "We can keep trying," Tyler protested. "Maybe if we redirect flow from another system." "There is no other system to redirect from," I said quietly. "We're already running everything at minimum capacity. The penguins need more than we can give them." The silence stretched. Finally, Tyler spoke. "So what do we do? Just let them die? Watch them suffer because we can't keep a pump running?" No. I'd been thinking about this for days, dreading the conversation. We relocate them. There's a natural cove about half a mile up the coast. Habitat's not perfect, but it's better than a failing tank. African penguins are hardy. They might adapt. Some of them, at least. It was insane, moving 16 penguins through Shambler territory to release them into an ecosystem they weren't native to, hoping they'd survive without human care. But it was the only option that gave them a chance. We spent a week planning the relocation. The cove was accessible by water. We had kayaks in the equipment storage for our education programs. We could load the penguins into transport crates, paddle up the coast where shamblers couldn't follow, and release them. Total exposure time, maybe 40 minutes if everything went perfectly. Nothing ever went perfectly. The morning of the relocation was overcast, which helped. Lower visibility for shamblers, cooler temperatures for birds in transit. We loaded all 16 penguins into 4 crates, Tyler talking to them constantly, promising them better water and more space and freedom. I took 1 kayak with 2 crates. Sam took the other with the remaining 2. Tyler stayed behind to manage the cameras and provide intel. The ocean was calm, which felt like the universe giving us one tiny break in an endless series of catastrophes. Paddling in the shadow of the aquarium's reinforced walls, I could see the full extent of the destruction outside our sanctuary. Buildings damaged, vehicles abandoned, and scattered among it all, the shamblers. Fewer than before, but still present. Still dangerous. One stood at the water's edge, staring at nothing, barely reacting as we paddled past 20 feet away. The cove was perfect. Rocky beach, tidal pools, access to fish populations. The penguins emerged from their crates confused but uninjured. They milled around on the rocks, calling to each other. That donkey bray sound carrying across the water. Then, one by one, they entered the ocean. And they swam, not confused or panicked, but purposeful, like they remembered what they were supposed to be doing. Wild animals in wild water, no longer dependent on humans to feed them and clean their exhibit and maintain their carefully controlled environment. "We did it," Sam said, watching them go. "We actually did it." Tyler's voice came through the radio, thick with emotion. "I can see them on the cameras. They're swimming. They look free." We paddled back in silence. It felt like victory and loss in equal measure. We'd saved those birds, given them a real chance, but we'd also failed to maintain the exhibit we were supposed to protect, failed at our core mission. Back in the aquarium, the empty penguin habitat stood dark and silent. Another exhibit, gone. Another piece of our purpose dismantled. "How much longer can we keep doing this?" Tyler asked that night. "How much longer before there's nothing left to maintain?" I didn't have an answer. The aquarium had started with 400 species. We were down to maybe 50 now, concentrated in the largest, most stable exhibits. The shark tank, the kelp forest, a handful of smaller species that were hardy enough to survive our increasingly minimal care. Month 5 was when we discovered we weren't alone. It happened during a scavenging run. Tyler had spotted a bookstore in the strip mall that might have useful supplies. Information would be valuable if we were going to be surviving long term. Sam and I were inside, gathering books on topics like water purification and food preservation and basic medicine, when we heard it. A voice, human, coming from somewhere nearby. "Hello? Is someone there? Please, I need help." Sam and I froze, looking at each other. In 5 months, we hadn't encountered another living person, hadn't even heard evidence that anyone else had survived. The voice was male, young, coming from the back of the store. We found him hiding in the storage room, early 20s, emaciated, clearly sick. He was lucid enough to communicate, but barely. His name was Adrian. He'd been surviving in the strip mall, moving between buildings, living on scavenged food and rainwater. He'd watched us on our runs, afraid to reveal himself, afraid we might be dangerous. "Please," he said again, "please help me. I'm so tired. I can't keep running. I need somewhere safe." We looked at him, this broken stranger, and I felt the weight of another impossible decision. Bringing him back meant sharing limited resources, meant trusting someone we didn't know, meant disrupting the careful balance we'd established. It also meant we wouldn't be alone anymore. "Can you walk?" Sam asked. "I think so, if you help me." We got him back to the aquarium, supporting him between us, Tyler clearing the route ahead. Set him up in a spare room with water and food and basic medical supplies. He was dehydrated and malnourished but not infected, just a survivor who'd run out of places to run to. Adrian slept for almost 20 hours straight. When he woke up, he couldn't stop crying, relief and grief and overwhelming emotion pouring out of him. Tyler sat with him, just being present, understanding what he needed. "I thought I was the last one," Adrian said eventually. "I thought everyone was gone and I was just waiting to die. Then I saw you going into that building and coming back out, saw you surviving. And I thought maybe there was still a reason to keep going." He integrated into our group quickly. 4 people could accomplish more than 3. Share the workload, cover more ground during scavenging runs, provide different perspectives on problems. Adrian had been a nursing student before everything collapsed, which meant he had medical knowledge we desperately needed. But 4 people also meant our food supply was stretched thinner. Our 3-month reserve became 2 months. The math was relentless and unforgiving. "We need a sustainable food source," I said during a meeting. "Scavenging can't work forever. Eventually, there won't be anything left to scavenge. We need to produce our own food somehow." "The roof," Adrian suggested. "It's flat, it gets full sun. We could do container gardening, grow vegetables, maybe even raise fish for protein." It was ambitious. Probably impossible. But impossible was better than giving up. We spent the next 2 weeks transforming the aquarium's roof into a survival garden. Soil from the landscaping around the building, containers from the restaurant and gift shop, seeds from a nearby garden center. We had no idea if any of it would work, but we tried. The marine life gave us an unexpected advantage. The waste from our exhibits, fish feces, uneaten food, algae growth, made excellent fertilizer when properly composted. Our closed-loop system became even more closed. The animals produced waste that fed plants, that fed us, that allowed us to keep the animals alive. A circle of life on a rooftop overlooking the apocalypse. Month 6 marked our turning point, the moment when we stopped just surviving and started actually living. The garden began producing vegetables, tomatoes and peppers and leafy greens. Not enough to live on, but enough to supplement our dwindling supplies. The aquarium systems reached a stable equilibrium that required maintenance but not constant crisis management. We established rhythms that felt almost normal: morning feeds for the animals, afternoon work on the garden or building maintenance, evening meals where we'd talk about something other than survival. Adrian taught us basic first aid. Tyler showed us his growing documentation archive. Sam explained how each system in the building worked, cross-training us in case something happened to him. I started giving daily tours to our group, walking them through the exhibits like I used to do for school groups, explaining the behaviors we were observing, the ecological relationships in the tanks, why each species mattered. It seemed pointless at first. We all knew this information. But it reminded us why we were doing this, why preservation mattered even when the world had ended. The sharks continued their eternal patrol. The kelp forest swayed in its artificial current. The remaining fish schooled and fed and lived their lives, completely unaware that they were among the last of their kind receiving human care. And we 4 survivors became caretakers of a floating ark, preserving fragments of the ocean in glass boxes, while humanity either rebuilt itself or faded into extinction outside our walls. We didn't know which future we were living in, but we knew one thing with absolute certainty. As long as we drew breath, those animals would have protectors. As long as the pumps ran and the water circulated and the systems functioned, life would continue in this strange fortress we'd inherited. It wasn't the future any of us had imagined, but it was our future now, and we'd fight for it with everything we had. Because in a world that had given up on preserving anything, we chose to preserve everything we could, one tank at a time, one day at a time, for as long as time allowed. The building hummed around us, that mechanical heartbeat that had become our lullaby and our morning alarm. The sharks swam, the fish schooled, the water cycled through filters and pumps and carefully maintained systems. And somewhere in that constant flow of water and life and desperate human effort, hope survived. Not the hope that everything would return to normal, that ship had sailed, but the hope that maybe, just maybe, something worth preserving could survive the end of the world, that caretakers would remain as long as creatures needed caring for, that the simple act of maintaining life in a dying world was its own form of resistance. We were biologists and engineers and students and survivors. We were the last staff of the Pacific Coast Aquarium, and we would keep the water flowing for as long as we possibly could, because that's what caretakers do. The end. If this story resonated with you, if you felt the weight of impossible choices and the stubborn hope of preservation, share it with others who understand that sometimes surviving means finding meaning in maintaining life when everything else is dying. Subscribe for more stories about the quiet heroes who choose care over despair, even when the world gives them every reason to give up.